here after we're done. Welcome to the show, Representative McCormick.
Thanks. Good to be with you today.
Glad to have you here. I want to start things off. Things are getting a little spicy down in LA, and I figured that'd be a great place to start our discussion. What are your thoughts about what's going on with the protests and Trump's handling of it down in LA?
Well, first of all, it's a shame because they're destroying their own society. If they want to purport that they belong there, the worst thing you could possibly do is wave around a Mexican flag and destroy property, and then create havoc, interrupt commerce, interrupt people trying to get to where they're going. That's not a good way to say we belong to this society. It's a horrible message. It's basically saying, hey, we're from Mexico and I'm invading you, and we're going to make your life miserable unless you allow us to break laws. That's what it says to me anyways. Now, I get it. I understand people who come here for a better way of life, but this is not the way to do it. Forcefully to say we're proud of breaking laws. We're going to force you to allow us to do this. Wrong answer. I can't imagine myself doing that in any other foreign country. If I go to another foreign country, I am going to behave as best as possible so people will actually want me there, not want me to leave. Furthermore, Newsom's handling of this, ridiculous. The local principalities, ridiculous. If you don't protect people's property, if you rely on the president to do the right thing, what kind of message does that send to the people that live there, who actually have a vested interest in peaceful existence? That shows them everything they need to know about how crazy California's got. I mean, we've already seen the lawlessness and what that resulted in San Francisco, and how they actually fired a bunch of politicians who wouldn't do their jobs to protect their society. And now you have a society in LA that's suffering equally, and they're going to reap the repercussions of this. This isn't going to go bad on Trump. This is going to go bad on Newsom. He's in the catch-22 because he didn't activate the National Guard. Now he's going to try to sue Trump because Trump wanted to protect its citizens. Shame on them. The fact that we had to activate Marines in order to get this under control. And I'm a Marine for 16 years. I mean, being a Marine is very near and dear to my heart. He's putting Marines in jeopardy. He's putting their society in jeopardy. And I'm very concerned that the liberals will do everything they can to be disruptors, to make themselves into martyrs, to actually create a scene. But this is all based on what Newsom did not do, not speaking out and openly against the violence, against the vandalism, against the interruption of commerce. This is a horrible precedent for Newsom. The difference between when George Bush did this before is the governor actually said, hey, we need your help. Newsom's not doing that. He should be held accountable.
Yeah. So thank you for your service, by the way, as a Marine. Trump and those closest to him are using the rhetoric of this being an insurrection. And I'm curious if you agree with that rhetoric, and if you think if Gavin Newsom should be arrested and charged with inciting an insurrection, and some of these other Democratic officials.
Now, first of all, I don't think he incited it. I think it's incited because a bunch of people who have been pampered by the left that basically said, come on in, we're going to treat you by giving you free things, by allowing you to come in to actually warp the census so we can actually have more representation politically, so we can have extra congressional seats that we're losing otherwise because people are moving out of California who actually produce things and produce income and businesses. They're trying to replace that with somebody who came here illegally, and now they're upset about it. And of course, you could say they incited it, but I think basically a certain demographic got spoiled. Now they're realizing, hey, we may actually be deported, and they're angry about it, and they're violent, and they're waving around a foreign national flag. So I don't know if you can have insurrection by a foreign national. I think that's actually called an invasion. And in this case, a violent invasion. So let's call it what it is. It's an invasion, not an insurrection.
Yeah, but some of these Democratic leaders, if they're supporting it and defending the invasion, wouldn't that be, some sort of insurrection or treason? Because I know this is a political kind of minefield for some people, but we got to, call it for what it is, a spade, if that's what they're doing, especially after what they did to Trump.
I get what you're saying. I want to be careful not to be a hypocrite, because I thought they were ridiculous when they're calling Trump an insurrectionist. I'm very careful about what I identify as what, hey, look, these people shouldn't be here. You're going to wave around a foreign national flag. Those people need to be accountable. I hope that Newsom gets kicked out of office. I hope he loses all his ability to ever run for presidency. I hope that we can financially, as a matter of fact, I came up with a bill just this week that we're going to submit that basically, if a governor it doesn't do the right thing and the president has to act on his behalf, then we get to charge the state for the National Guard and the bill instead of charging the federal system, just to hold governors accountable so that they don't have to avoid real politics, real decisions, and doing the right thing for their people. So I want to hold them accountable, but I just don't see there any, just like Trump couldn't be held accountable legally. I don't want to waste time and money in a legal system that we're not going to really have a realistic chance of prosecuting. I just want to make these people seem as weak as they are and hold them accountable that way at the balloting box, hold them accountable fiscally and get rid of them. They're just horrible politicians with horrible policies. And we want to make that the focus rather than something that it's not.
Okay. So you brought up the election system and holding them accountable at the ballot box. I personally, and I know a lot of people that watch Badlands Media, we have very little faith in our electoral process. We think the elections are fraudulent. And I don't think we've ever really gotten to the bottom of that. Do you think Congress at any point will address the fraudulent election system? And I know that's a tough question too, because a lot of the people that are elected to Congress and government are beneficiaries of that fraudulent system. So it's hard to imagine them wanting to fix it. But I'm curious what your thoughts are on that, and if you guys have had any discussions behind the scenes on that.
Well, this goes back to your statewide systems, right? So we can control the federal elections, no doubt about that. We have the right to control federal elections, and the fact that we are doing that at the federal level is good. The problem is when you get to California and states like that want to have illegal immigrants vote in elections, whether they be local or whatever, we have to make sure, first of all, they're not allowed to vote in federal elections. And then once again, I think they're going to suffer. When these people come in here and say, we're going to raise taxes, I think the upper crust of California has to pay about 57% in taxes. That's not counting sales tax.
Jeez.
That's just income tax. When you add state and local along with federal, I mean, these guys are getting slaughtered. They're getting close to 2/3 of their income being consumed by taxes. When you add in the sales tax, I mean, it's just ridiculous. They're going to rebel and they're going to walk with their feet. They're going to find ways. And pretty soon, California, who's already kind of going bankrupt now, especially now that they're not being subsidized by the federal government and bailouts by Pelosi, they will see a reversal of fortune, just like Europe did when they went too far left. This is like what we're trying to keep the United States away from at the federal level. This is why it's really important to have the ability to win the hearts and minds of our young people. And this next generation, they're libertarians at heart. That means they don't want the government involved in their personal affairs or their corporate affairs. We should be paying attention as politicians to give them back their rights to make a good living, their rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness without the interference of an overbearing government. That is the main purpose of a government.
I totally agree with you. And so let's kind of transition to this, the big, beautiful bill. And personally, I don't think it's all that beautiful, and it's mainly because of the 1,000 pages. Like, I don't like the idea of a 1,000-page bill being shoved down my throat, adding $4 trillion to the deficit or the debt ceiling. I know there's a lot of Trump's agenda within this bill, which I do think is a good thing, but I'm curious what your thoughts are on it overall. Because, just back in December, I think it was, we had that other bill that was 1,000-some pages. It caused this big kerfuffle, and then everybody kind of backed down, and it was like 100-some pages after that. What are your thoughts on the bill, and what do you think it's going to pass as it is to the Senate, or what's the status on it?
Yeah, so I'll start at the beginning. When you mentioned the CR that we passed in December, I was one of 38 members to vote against the first CR because I didn't think it was good enough. And then the second CR, we actually made worse. And I was one of 34 to vote against that one too because I didn't think it was good enough. In other words, I'm a fiscal hawk. You can see the fiscal cliff coming from a mile away. I mean, this is easy. It's simple math. In the next 10 years, matter of fact, the next 7 years, you're going to have Social Security go bankrupt. It's going to have an automatic 21% cut unless we add massive amounts of debt to our already huge amount of debt of close to around $37 trillion. In about 8 to 9 years, you're going to have the same thing with Medicare, which is going to have an automatic 11% cut, or once again, add a massive amount of debt to the budget. And then, of course, the budget crisis, which we're right now we're approaching, I think, about 1/3 of our budget being spent on just debt interest payments. That's ridiculous. That's going to, it already consumes more than the military. And now the price of that borrowing is going to go up because we just got downgraded by Moody's. It's the second time in 2 years. That means another $9 trillion in the next decade of interest payments on top of what we were already paying. This is crazy. I mean, this is going to really be hamstringing the future of America. And so it's not good enough. The big, beautiful bill is not good enough. However, even though I'm one of 32 who wrote the speaker and said we have to have that $1.8 trillion locked in, I'm not a big believer also, by the way, in this 10-year budgeting process. in 4 years when we're supposed to finally go deficit neutral, not deficit, not neutral, not from a standpoint of we're going to bring in the same amount that we're going to spend, but actually not spend more than we spent this year. It's already, we're going to be 2 Congresses and a president away from now. You have no idea who's going to be in charge of that budget. So this 10-year plan is a farce. Just tell me what we're going to do in the next 2 years when we actually control the budget for sure. And that's all I want to hear about. So next year we know that $385 billion more in tax dividends is going to be given to SALT, which means out of the $415 billion more in deficit spending we're going to have, 385 of that comes from SALT. The president said to the conference, he said, look, I don't like SALT. It's not good. It doesn't sell to the public. It seems to benefit just liberal states and just the wealthiest. It's not going to sell well to the public. It's not going to save people in the election. Let's get away from that. Yet we still put it in there. We're still not attacking IRA provisions. We're still not to pre-COVID level spending, even when adjusted for inflation. But once again, being the guy who doesn't want to go to another CR, the only option I have is get whatever I can out of this and use whatever leverage we can to make the best bill possible. And that's what we did, I think. We passed by 1 vote. It wasn't a great bill, but it was the best we could get. Now it's up to the Senate to hopefully improve it. But maybe they won't. Maybe they'll make it worse. Maybe they'll make it better. Maybe it'll be the same. That's yet to be seen. But the Senate now holds our fate in their hands. And the rescission process, I think, will be modest when you really start to boil it down. The first rescission process, I think, has about $9 billion savings. And people are arguing over that. So you do the math on this. We still have a long ways to go.
Yeah, Doge, the Doge cuts, I would say that's been pretty underwhelming. Going into it, we were promised like 1 trillion, 2 trillion. And I think that kind of waste and fraud and abuse exists. I don't think they've uncovered it yet. We've got 180 billion uncovered so far, according to the Doge website, and which is like 2.5% of our spending, very minimal. And then what's been put forth to Congress from the White House is only 9.4 billion, which is like 0.13%, which is pretty disappointing. And so I'm curious what your thoughts are on Doge, and if you think it's done the job as advertised.
Well, first of all, let's just call it what it is. We have a 30% deficit spending. If you got rid of all, and I mean all of our discretionary spending, that means the military, which is about 15%, and everything else, ag, you name it, anything that's not Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, the mandatory spending items, you're still not there. That's how That's why if you cut 10% for the discretionary spending, you still only 10% of what? 25%? It's a 2.5% cut. And that would be the biggest cut we've ever done. So, and we're not going to grow our way out of this. Even if you get 4% growth, you can compound it. It'll help us some, but it really doesn't. We're not going to grow our way. We have to be more responsible. And that means we're going to have to look at what are we going to do with Social Security. There's some bipartisan bills out there. And look, I'm a fiscal hawk, like I said, but I want to also assure people we're not going to cut benefits that are existing or anybody approaching it. But if we don't adjust for age when people are living longer, it's going to go bankrupt. And really soon, by the way. Maybe not this presidency, but the next presidency, regardless if you have a Democrat or Republican, it's going to go bankrupt. Same thing with Medicare. So we're going to have to attack those mandatory spending items to make sure that it's a bipartisan effort to actually do something for this country to save us from catastrophe. We have to shore up our spending problem because otherwise our interest rates will actually make our budget non-viable. So we have to do a lot. It's not just a little bit. We got to do some heavy lifting. And I know those moderates are struggling. They want to make sure they maintain themselves in Congress. And I want to see them remain in Congress too. But I think if we do the right thing, you have a robust economy that people will say, oh, look, they're actually addressing something that's going to affect all of us. And they'll actually stay in office. You can never out left the left. That's what I always say. So do the right thing.
So considering everything you just said there and the bill and the trajectory we're on and the almost insurmountable feat it appears of this deficit, any other business in the world, if it was run like our government was run, it would go defunct, it would go bankrupt, and it would close down. So the question I ask anytime I have a representative on, and I know this is a difficult one to answer, but why should Americans be paying their taxes considering this is what we're getting from our government?
Yeah. Well, first of all, if we don't pay our taxes, just like you and I, we're going to jail.
Yeah.
It's not a choice. That's one of the unfortunate things about a government. And by the way, the most efficient government in the world is a dictatorship or a monarchy or a theocracy where only one person gets to make all the decisions. That's why our government is so frustrating. It's a democracy. There's so many checks and balances, not just between the legislative, executive, and judicial branches, but also between Congress, the Senate, and the president when we're trying to get bills passed. It's so frustrating because you never get what you want. but it's also the best thing that exists. I know we're a republic, but this is also a democracy, and it is made in balance so that it would never become more powerful than the people, which makes it really hard to change in dramatic ways year by year. So we'll do the best we can. We'll hopefully bend that curve, and hopefully better people will come along over time, and we'll get back on track. Because otherwise, the alternative is we will bankrupt this country. We will be a empire of the past, so to speak. And that's bound to happen sooner or later, but I hope it's later. Hopefully it's not on my watch.
Yeah, I mean, that it's not really encouraging. I'm not going to lie. It's the threat of like either pay your taxes or go to jail when the taxes go to what we're getting here. Like we're on the verge of like you said, collapse. I mean, the path we're on is unsustainable. And we're here at Badlands. We're trying to talk about a solution. And I don't think there's enough of that going on. It's so much politics in today's day and age. And I'm concerned with Trump in office. He's our last hope, and we have a majority right now. And the way things are going with these first 4 or 5 months of Congress and the Senate, we run the risk of, I think, losing some of these fraudulent elections at the midterms and losing his majority that he has. Like, because we've hardly gotten anything done with Congress so far to this point. And so, I'm just curious, like, do you see after this bill goes through, if we're going to get like a speed rollout of a bunch of other bills going through, or what's the plan moving forward beyond this bill to get things on the right track and implement Trump's agenda?
Well, I'll make the case that we haven't actually gotten this much done since probably Newt Gingrich. We haven't done a reconciliation the right way for several decades now. So we are
Really?
getting something done. Maybe it's not everything we need to get done. Maybe it's not
Yeah.
enough. And I would agree with that. But at least we're actually moving the needle with a very slim majority. So
Yeah.
the fact that we're able to get that done is something. So I don't want to say we're not getting anything done, but this is hard work. And like I said, trying
Yeah.
to get everybody, I mean, I'm a fiscal hawk, and then you got to balance that with the moderates, and there's more moderates than there are fiscal hawks. So to get anything done right now with a 4 or 5 vote majority is something. But you're right, we need to do more. And unfortunately, we always reach critical mass last second. It's a knee-jerk reactionary instead of visionary. And that's the problem with government. But that's usually when we find our backbone, is when our backs are against the wall. That's why we wait too long to prepare for wars. And that's why it takes us a while to adjust. But unfortunately, once again, we have a system that's inefficient on purpose.
Yeah, I would agree with that totally. I mean, the last minute thing is how they sneak in a lot of these things. Like, there's been a little bit of some hype around this AI stuff that was kind of snuck into the bill, which I think is still in there. And I don't know if the Senate will rescind that or not. But Mark Green, it was just announced today he's leaving the House, so I think that even lessens the majority. I don't know if you have any comment on that.
Yeah, he'll leave after the rescission process, which is good. I mean,
Okay.
he's a very good friend of mine. I hate to see him leave. I understand why he's doing it, but I hate to see him leave. But as far as that AI provision, and I was on the AI task force. I'm on cybersecurity. I just went to an AI conference that was bicameral and bipartisan this morning, talking to industry leaders in the AI industry. And first of all, let's realize that all AI folks want to make sure that we don't have 50 different regulations for 50 different states. There's an interstate commerce clause that protects our industries against that sort of thing. This is interstate. This is not just interstate, but international trade. What we want to make sure is that I asked them to take a look at the Senate, from the Senate side, before they send it back to us, to make sure that language is tight, that it doesn't preclude that the government would be able to say, look, you have to have an AI supercenter in your district, or not be able to because of the federal government. But it's very good, I think, and that's why I don't want to see this vilified. I want people to have a realistic viewpoint. If you would have limited the internet with 50 different states having regulations, we would not be competitive in the world right now. If we do this with AI, we will not be competitive in the world right now. That's just how it works. This is such a fast evolving technology that if we fall behind, and we have 50% of the researchers in the world for AI exist in China. They're far outspending us with their government and investing in the future of technologies. The only thing saving us is our private industry, which, if we overregulate with 50 different states coming with 50 different regulations, we will fall behind, and it will punish us for the rest of our lives. I promise you, the most transformative technology in the world. If we fall behind, we will regret it. Now, we want to make sure we protect people's security. That's up to us as a federal government to make sure that we oversee this interstate and international commerce. But we need to get on that right away so that states don't feel obligated. This is kind of like what we had with the surprise billing. surprise billing, a lot of states were trying to put in their own provisions because the federal government waited too long. And then when we came up with something that was not tightly worded, and of course it was abused. So this is our challenge in Congress, but I actually support the fact that we put that in there because I want to see us have the freedom to negotiate our own survival in this AI super world that we live in the development and dissemination of this product without compromising our security or our secrets.
Yeah, I agree. The AI is the future, and we want to be the leaders in that. And I think Trump is definitely taking the steps to get us there. This bill, am I understanding it correctly that it limits the states from putting regulations on it? It prevents them from doing that? Is
Yeah.
that correct?
So right now we did this in Georgia recently, where the state legislator actually, I reached out to my my state senator, one of my state senators, and I said, hey, look, having our state actually inhibit AI in a special way, basically interstate wise, is going to really reduce Georgia's ability to compete. If we have businesses in Georgia and they can't compete with another state or another international agency, we fall behind. That's it. And when you have an AI industry that basically has to compete worldwide with China, with Europe, with India, we better not fall behind. So this is not to make it less safe. Like I said, this is much like when we were developing the internet. If you overregulate it, we will fall behind. We can do things at the federal level that make it safe, to make it sure that our information is secure. And by the way, we already have digital laws that if enforced, basically do that already. But we can make it more specific, more germane to this AI process. But we already have laws that protect people in very real ways. We're looking at some bipartisan efforts, bicameral efforts to make that locked into place. But yeah, very much so. We don't want to have states making laws that make us have a disadvantage against our peers internationally.
Sure. So it's more of a national security issue. What do you think of Palantir getting access to the data and implementing that program? And that was a huge story this last week, and a lot of people are freaking out over it. I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah. So Palantir, I think, just like Artemis and just like other new big companies, there's all kind. Your phone has access to tons of information that's disseminated to people right now. That's why we're worried about TikTok. TikTok had all your private information, and yet we still have TikTok, and we made a law to get rid of it. Why is that? Because we right now think that there's some sort of advantage to it. I want to see it gone unless it's sold. It needs to be sold. I'm all about protecting our information, but I don't think Palantir is a bad actor. It's kind of a need to know basis. Anytime that a company has access to something on a federal level, it's for a specific purpose. If they're caught doing anything nefarious, they will be prosecuted. If they're doing it by direction. That's my understanding of their access to information.
Sure. And I know you got a hard stop here in just a couple minutes. So I have two quick questions. You're a former ER doctor. I'm curious what your thoughts are on what RFK is doing, and like what the golden age of medicine looks like. And then also, what are your thoughts as a veteran and a former ER doctor on lifting restrictions on the use of cannabis and psilocybin for veterans?
Yeah. So we'll start with the first things first. I think I met with JFK Jr. and RFK Jr. and actually read the same books, Good Energy and other books. Some of those books are pretty extreme. I agree with the premise. I agree that we need to be more proactive in our health. We're one of the more unhealthy countries in the world because we're obese. It causes massive health problems. We need to eat right. We need to exercise. We need access to different healthcare alternatives. And we need to have a choice. And here's where I think we've gone wrong in the past. When the government mandates something, it doesn't matter if it's a vaccination or whatever it is, people will push back. Nobody wants to be told what to do. And so if you want to sell a vaccination, first thing, the worst thing that you can do is say you have to. Americans will be like, I'm not, because you cannot tell me what to do.
Kind of like our taxes, right?
Well, that you have
yeah,
to, but
yeah.
But death and taxes, those are about the two things that are certain in life.
Yeah.
But when you talk about like just having healthcare choices, the fact that we're not making it mandated for children to have certain vaccinations now is a good thing. Now people can actually have a good conversation with their physician, make a good choice, because not everything needs to be mandated. Matter of fact, different people benefit, some people are harmed. We have to make decisions based on who has immunity, who has risk for what conditions, if it benefits them or not at certain ages. These are great discussions to have with your physician, to research before you make a decision, not to be forced down your throat with one-size-fits-all policies. So I like his approach. It gives you more flexibility, more information, and you get to make decisions based on your information that you have available.
That's awesome. And okay, the last question was the use of cannabis and psilocybin for veterans. Lifting those restrictions. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think when you're talking about treating PTSD, I think it's one of the things that's outside the normal realm. I think it's being tried, not just that, but other different things, everything from ketamine, cannabis, mushrooms, and so forth. I've heard really good things about it. I think it needs to be continued to be studied and used by physicians who know what they're doing, who are using evidence-based medicine to treat patients in the best way possible in non-addictive ways. And as far as I know, these things are not addictive, especially when they're used appropriately. And I want to see our veterans as healthy as possible, with the best long-term prognosis as possible. And if this is a way to do it, let's do it.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time representing McCormick. Good luck getting stuff sorted out up there. I know you guys got a huge mountain to climb. So
Always a pleasure. Thanks so much. Semper Fidelis.
thank you.